Want to listen to the podcast where we talk sports raw and unfiltered?
Mahomes looking to flip, takes it in for the touchdown.
Looking for a little something on the edgy side?
Keep your head out there. They're going to do dumb. Play our game. All right? Play hard, but stay poised.
You're about to be locked into the Unscripted podcast.
Let's be great. Let's be great.
Yeah. Oh, man. Episode number 2 of the Unscripted podcast. As always, I appreciate you listening to me, whatever platform you're listening to, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, or however you listen to your podcast. Truly, definitely appreciate that. You can follow me on Twitter at Brian A. Lion. And always remember, we still need to arrest the cops that killed innocent Breonna Taylor. All right. I have been critical of a team for the last couple years. I have been ready to just write this team completely off. And that is the Denver Nuggets. A lot of people ask me, why am I so harsh on the Denver Nuggets? Well, I'm harsh for a reason. I truly am harsh for a reason. They are the regular season Denver Nuggets. They never, ever in the playoffs show up. I think they are missing the piece. I don't know what the piece is that Denver is missing, but they definitely are missing the piece. I'm not going to take credit away from the Utah Jazz for basically blowing their doors off in Game 2. But when you look at this Denver Nugget team, they should be excelling. They should be much better than they are. Mike Conley came back from Utah, and I don't know what he did when he came back from the baby and being quarantined. Maybe being locked up in that room was like definitely having Mike Conley truly upset. Mike Conley comes out there and basically just destroys the Denver Nuggets. And then you look at the Nuggets and you look at Jokic, who had 15 and 5. Unacceptable for a guy that's supposed to be a legit superstar. You can't have 15 and 5. Jamal Murray, 12 and 5. And then nobody else was relevant. Michael Porter Jr., not relevant. Paul Millsap, not relevant. I don't know where Denver goes eventually. I don't know if it's... I'm never going to say it's time to change coaches so fast. I don't know if they just need to add players in the offseason, if they need to bolster the bench. Sometimes bolstering your bench does help because these guys truly, truly need some help. And I think that if Denver can get the help that they need, then, I don't know, maybe they could be better. It's frustrating because you want to trust the Denver Nuggets, but you can't trust them. How can you trust a team who, to me, will always be labeled as a regular season team? Again, I am not taking anything away from Utah. Utah came out and played one hell of a game. And those boys are shooting well, man. It seemed like Utah wasn't missing. So, credit to the Utah Jazz and what they're doing out there. A series I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about Toronto and Brooklyn. There's no disrespect, man. Look, Brooklyn's a year away. Toronto's the defending champions. What else do you really want me to say about that series? I'm not disrespecting the Brooklyn Nets at all. I just don't want to be a part of talking about that series. It's not good. Let's just be honest. It's not a good series. But what is a good series here, and I definitely want to go kind of in depth on this one, would be the Clippers and the Mavericks. Very chippy series. I'll wait to go about one guy here because I'm not even going to talk about him just yet. I want to talk about the series in general. Coming into this series, I said to myself, Dallas stands a good chance of beating the LA Clippers. And if they beat the LA Clippers, then it starts to say, well, it's not Kawhi. Let's just be honest. We know it ain't Kawhi right now. We know that it's the Clippers and their downfalls. They got guys in the team who's supposed to be a scorer. And guess what? I'm going to talk about it because I can't do it no more. I tried my best to ignore it and don't talk about it. Playoff P. He said he's not a scorer That knack is something that he doesn't do. I'm not James Harden. Okay, let me clear something up. Doc Rivers brought you into this team. He traded for you. He didn't trade for you to sit here right now, today, and start making excuses. You're making excuses now. So now you go from playoff P to pitiful P. And I'm saying that you're pitiful because you don't come out in the middle of the playoffs and start coming up with excuses to why you're not performing in the playoffs. I'd rather you say things like, hey, you know what? I haven't shot the ball well. I'm going to be better in the next couple of games. He said that towards the end, but his initial thing was, oh, man, yeah, I'm not playoff P. I don't know who called me playoff P. And yeah, that's not my knack. I play both sides of the ball. Dude, he's shooting like 7 for whatever. He isn't hitting anything. He's basically banking on Kawhi Leonard to continue to carry that team as far as they can go. And I'm saying this out of frustration because, again, you don't come out in the middle of the playoffs and start saying things like, oh, I just don't think that, I'm not a scorer. Don't classify me as a scorer. I'm not James Harden. Like, man, it's frustrating because he has talent. But this was his problem with the Indiana Pacers. This was his problem with the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is his problem with the Los Angeles Clippers. Do you get the trend here? The trend is continuing to happen everywhere he goes. So for Paul George to, get upset because the internet is slandering him, look, dude, it's 2020. If this was maybe 20 years ago, maybe you couldn't get all this slander because there was no social media or anything like that. But right now, you have to take it on the chin. You have to come out and be better. And now is the perfect time to be better because nobody knows if Luka Doncic is playing in the next game. And, I mean, the ankle injury looks serious to me. He was limping off the floor. And he played well, but, he was limping off the floor. That's going to put more pressure on Kristaps Porzingis to be the guy. And I think that people haven't given this guy no credit at all. Porzingis, remember, this is his first playoff series. He's never been in the playoffs before. And he's coming out playing like he's been here before. He came back off that gruesome injury. And people started writing Porzingis off, saying that maybe he lost it. Maybe he never really had it. Well, the dude's been pretty much unstoppable in the playoffs. But if they're going to play without Luka, they're going to be in trouble because then they're going to be asking Trey Burke to do more. Seth Curry has been well. Seth Curry comes off the bench and plays well, but then that puts Trey Burke in the position at the point guard. And Luka is a special talent, and I don't think that anybody can replace Luka. The Clippers may have their meal ticket to round 2 if Luka's out the remaining of the playoffs. All right, let's stay in the Western Conference because I love the West. I think the West is very exciting. It's got a ton of storylines. And we all know tonight that the Lakers and the Trailblazers play at 8:30 tonight. So when you guys are listening to this, this is before the Lakers and Blazers game. I want to talk about game number 2. Was I right at game 2 or game 3? Whatever number I was at. Tonight's game 3, I'm sorry. Game 2. The Lakers did something very great in game 2. They stopped Damian Lillard coming off of that pick. Every time you notice in the seeding games, Dame Lillard was able to come off that pick and hit that long-range three-pointer. Well, the Lakers, their bigs stepped up off the pick. Now, if I'm Portland, you have to make adjustments because Lillard obviously is hurt. But you have to make adjustments. And Terry Stotts, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to help you out. You should have C.J. McCollum bring the ball up. Why? Because that gives Dame Lillard more room to kind of maneuver and move around. But Terry Stotts, that's the only free advice I'm going to give you, man. If you want some more advice, you're definitely going to have to pay or cash at me. You're not getting no more free advice from me. But the Lakers played well in game 2. I told everybody, plain and simple, if you thought that LeBron was going to go down 0-2, then turn your key in. That's been my favorite slogan lately. Turn your key in. And everybody goes, oh, it wasn't LeBron. It wasn't LeBron. Well, here goes the thing. If the Lakers go down 0-2, do we mention Anthony Davis if they go down 0-2? Hell no. Nobody even mentions Anthony Davis if they go down 0-2. The first 3 letters somebody's going to say is LBJ. That's what they're going to say. This is coming from a diehard Celtics fan, mind you, but I'm very biased when it comes to this NBA conversation because that's what I do. And you're listening to the Unscripted podcast right here, talking about the Lakers and the Blazers series right here. LeBron didn't have a great game, too. I mean, 10, 6, and 7. I think the layoff hurt LeBron a ton. You know, he's in shape, and I get it. He pays whatever $2 million to keep his body, in tip-top shape. But the layoff hurt LeBron. Think about it. People, LeBron was hitting on cylinders before this. MVP candidate, and it just got shut down. So just imagine this. You on the grind at work or whatever, and you doing your thing, and all of a sudden they're just like, no more. Or even your sport. If you play football, basketball, whatever, you're playing great. And then out the blue, they just cut the lights off and say, no more. He's got to train his body to get back to that. I am not going to make excuses for LeBron because I hate anybody that does it. But the problem is if they went down 0-2, everybody would be saying, LeBron's down 0-2. Now everybody's saying, oh, Anthony Davis carried him. This is what Anthony Davis was brought in for. If you've been watching the game of basketball, Anthony Davis was brought to the Lakers for this reason. He was not brought to be Robin. Actually, LeBron was taking a step back and wanting Anthony Davis to be that guy. The guy who showed up for the Lakers in Game 2, of course, somehow I slandered him Game 1 and he just heard my show or something like that, would be Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Had 16 points. And the one thing nobody talks about KCP in Game 2 was the defense on Damian Lillard. He was checking Damian Lillard full court. So for a guy to check somebody full court and then ask to produce somewhat on the offensive end, hey, listen, I slandered you Game 1. I'll give you credit where credit due is Game 2. But Game 3, I got to see more KCP. KCP does this. He has these slight, decent games, and then he tends to fade away again. The Lakers did something that I asked them to do, and maybe it was in garbage time a lot, but J.R. Smith played some decent minutes. Dwight Howard, again, defensively, he's there. I wanted to see less of Caruso. Guess what I got? I got less of Alex Caruso. So I figured that my podcast is somehow getting out to somebody because I asked for things to happen, and those things tend to happen. Damian Lillard expects to play tonight with the index finger, I believe, or the ring finger that's dislocated on the non-shooting hand. It's going to be tough, man. I said that the Lakers will win in 6. With the Damian Lillard injury, I think it's Lakers in 5, man. I'm not even going to duck that smoke. It's Lakers in 5, man. Another good series that everybody's kind of watching out and probably watching right now would be the Houston Rockets and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Again, I always say this. For the Thunder to stand a chance at this point, they got to have a blowout game. There can't be any more, Oklahoma City up by 2, Oklahoma City up by 1. Oklahoma City's just got to play an outstanding game. They have to get a double-digit lead, and they have to maintain the double-digit lead. If it's a close game, then I'm going to say the Houston Rockets are going to pull away, and the Houston Rockets could potentially sweep the Oklahoma City Thunder, who I said in the last episode had a 0.2% chance to make the playoffs, and they've made the playoffs. So I think Oklahoma City is a year ahead of time. If they get swept, I still think they're a year ahead of time, and I think Billy Donovan has done one hell of a job as the coach this year. The guy for me for Houston that just stands out is the ageless wonder, Jeff Green. And before we take a break, we'll talk a little bit about Jeff Green here. Jeff Green has been a guy that has always had these moments, okay? And even coming from Georgetown, he had those moments. And playing with the Oklahoma City Thunder, he had those moments. Playing with the Celtics, he had those moments. I think it's somewhat maybe coming together. And I'm not saying he's at the end of his career, but it's coming together kind of late. I got to give kudos to Jeff, man. Jeff's been out there. He's been a big part of Houston's bench. When James Harden goes to sit down on the bench, guys like Jeff Green, Ben McLemore, who hasn't really scored this game, have played well, and I can't take that from them. So, Houston has something special here. Do I think that the three-point concept will get Houston to the NBA Finals? No, it'll never work. I'm not a big fan of shooting 65 three-pointers a game. I don't think that wins you a NBA championship. I think the last team who shot all these type of three-pointers were the Orlando Magic, and they made the finals in '09 to lose to the Lakers in 5 games. All right, what we'll do is we will take a break, come back on the other side of the break, and talk about the Celtics and 76ers series, and we'll also discuss some intriguing things that could be going on in Philadelphia. As always, I appreciate you guys listening to the Unscripted podcast. Hang tight, folks. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Bailey.
And I'm Mike Hill.
And our lives matter.
Black Lives Matter.
I am Dr. Contessa Metcalf, and my life matters. Our lives matter.
Black Lives Matter.
My name is Tanya Sam. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
We will continue to fight for Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd, and so many others who have lost their lives. But we have to create a change, you guys. We have to use our voices, our resources, and our wallets to make that change. I ask of you today to make a donation to Know Your Rights Camp.
Colors Change. NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. ACLU. Black Lives Matter.
Our lives matter.
This is President Barack Obama. In the story of America, the greatest chapters are moments of challenge, when we see people serving their country and one another. Volunteers who step forward into hospital corridors and church basements, along levees and fire lines. And the next chapter is yours to help write. Sign up to volunteer at usaservice.org. That's usaservice.org. Let's renew America together.
A message from Renew America Together, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Confessions of a Potentially Perfect Parent, brought to you by AdoptUsKids.org.
I might look like an adult, like a person who could possibly be a parent, but I have no idea how to talk like one. And everyone knows that if you want to be a parent, you have to sound good when you say things like, "Don't make me turn this car around," or "because I said so," or "Don't make me come back there." I don't even really know what those things mean, but I know that I actually believed my parents when they said them to me. How did they manage to sound so convincing? Here we go. "Don't make me come back there." Ugh, no, that's not tough enough at all. Kids can sense weakness. "Don't make me come back there." Ooh, yeah, that's better. In fact, that kind of sounded like my dad. Weird.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to listen to you practice your dad voice. Call 1-888-200-4005 or visit AdoptUsKids.org for more information. This message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Unscripted podcast. As always, I appreciate everybody. I'll say it every show. I appreciate everybody that takes time out of their busy evenings and to listen to the podcast. Definitely appreciate you. We talked about a lot of the Western Conference. We talked about playoff P being called Pitiful P now. I can say this, man. I hate to go backwards, but that is very pitiful what he did. You know, that's just not what a superstar does. And if I'm Kawhi Leonard, I sit him down today and tell him, you get confidence. You don't ever go to the media again and start trying to, backpedal your way out of the superstar moniker. Because if you are supposed to be a air quote superstar, you have to play like a superstar. And it seems like when the lights are bright, Paul George just fades away. All right, talking about fading away here, it looks like the Celtics are finally starting to fade away with the series up 3-0 against the Philadelphia 76ers. Let me tell you something, and this even comes as a Celtics fan, is that Joel Embiid, man, is a special talent. 30 points, 13 rebounds. The guy played 35 minutes. Again, you're asking a guy who, to me, is not in the best shape in the world, is asked to do a lot to play 35 minutes. He's trying his best for the 76ers to get a game. Unfortunately, they can't get a game. Josh Richardson played well, and Shake Milton, the guy I always pick on right now, and I have to be biased with it, is Al Horford. I said going into that Al Horford leaving the Celtics for the 76ers, I was upset. I was pissed off. I'm not even going to lie to you. But when the 76ers got Al, I said, oh, this could be too much. I mean, this is like 5, 6, 8 guys. Like in 1990, 95, or maybe 1990 through 98, this lineup, this 76ers lineup, they could have won an NBA championship. Let me put that right out there. In 2020, you're not going to win a lineup with 5 guys, 6'8" above on the floor. Why? It showed at the end of the game. Al Horford was forced to switch off onto Kemba Walker, and Kemba Walker pulled out barbecue. He pulled out the barbecue for the chicken and barbecued Al Horford. Al just doesn't have it anymore. I mean, but the contract, I mean, he's going to be living good for the next couple of years. I mean, and Philly's got to smack themselves over the face here. 6 points, 10 rebounds, and 38 minutes of play. Again, Al Horford just doesn't fit the team. I don't think he fit the team from day one. They had some struggles. They admitted to the struggles. But Al Horford is not the guy for that team. And I can pretty much can tell you that I think Philly would probably wish this was like 10 years ago and the amnesty rule was around, because they probably would can Horford after this year, man. It just hasn't worked out well. And I get it. It takes time to build a team, and you can't expect to bring in a guy and expect him to just catch on to the system and be great. But you brought Al Horford in. You stole him from the Celtics, and you brought him in as the missing piece. And I get it. While Ben Simmons is out and he's a great floor general, you would still think in your head, the Sixers should get a game. And they haven't got a game. And I can give you some key reasons to why they haven't got a game. Jason Tatum, has played well. I think the Celtics, and I think Brad Stevens is going to have to talk to Tatum about the fouling. I think sometimes he can be a little too aggressive. He has to understand if the Celtics plan is to go to the Eastern Conference Finals, if they want to move on to round 2 as well, because I'm not going to count the 76ers out the door yet. When they want to move to round 2, Tatum has to stay out of foul trouble. He cannot have 2 fouls in the first quarter against the Toronto Raptors. He cannot have 2 fouls in the first quarter against the Milwaukee Bucks. Those things can't happen. The one guy I think every Celtics fan will love, I think he's a Celtic for life. Hopefully he can stay that way, because I can't imagine him in no other jersey, would be Marcus Smart. Yeah, he had the points this game with 14 and 8, but Marcus Smart makes a lot of plays. And I'll say this on every podcast until the Celtics are eliminated. There are so many plays that Marcus Smart make that you cannot put on the stat sheet. The dives on the floor, the intercepted steals. These aren't just regular steals. These are intercepted steals. And Marcus Smart is just the grit and grind of the Boston Celtics. The East, to me, it's going to come down to Toronto, Boston, Milwaukee. It's no disrespect, man. I mean, Orlando, I'll talk about Orlando real quick. Orlando got 1 game. Listen, if anybody thought Orlando was going to get 2 games, turn in your keys. That is my new favorite slogan. Turn in your keys if you thought Orlando was going to get 2 games. I knew Orlando wasn't getting 2 games. You knew Orlando wasn't getting 2 games. Getting that first game, kudos to Orlando. They shocked Milwaukee coming out the door. And what did Milwaukee do? Put the pedal to the metal and told Orlando, look, there's a reason why you're the 8th seed. Guess what? Orlando's probably going to be better. They'll get better in the offseason. But Milwaukee, to me, is going to pull away with this series and end it. And again, they got the 1 game. Kudos to them. A series that's kind of gritty. Maybe not gritty. Maybe kind of confusing, because I want to talk about this team, is the Indiana Pacers and Miami Heat series. And I want to talk about the Pacers a little bit. I feel like since 2013, I've always said something about the Pacers. I've always said they need the guy. They have a bunch of streaky guys. They have a bunch of, he was good today guy. Is he going to be good the next 5 games guy? I've always said that. And again, they're running into the same problem 7 years later. While Malcolm Brogdon is one hell of a talent, and Victor Oladipo is one hell of a talent, and Mr. Cash Considerations, TJ Warren, has been good as well. They're missing people. They're still missing a bench. They're still missing consistency. I'm going to tell you this. Oladipo, Brogdon, and T.J. Warren. Two of those guys are not going to be consistent every night, and they're going to expect one guy to carry the team. And I'm not going to say this because you're not going to get a superstar that's going to go to Indiana. You're not going to get I'm just throwing names out there. You're not going to get a LeBron James type player or a Kawhi Leonard type player that's going to go out to the Indiana Pacers. They're going to have to build that team. They're going to have to get guys in the offseason. They may have to get a couple veterans who can score off the bench. They have to look to change the roster around a little bit. You cannot continue to have failures because, listen, what I admit on this podcast is something very different. It's very unique. Nate McMillan, even though he got the extension, if Indiana isn't moving far, Nate McMillan could get canned. Not this year, because this year I think a lot of coaches are going to get it passed. The only coach I expect to see get canned is Brett Brown. I don't expect to see nobody else getting canned. But eventually Indiana's going to start looking at the head coach and going, okay, well, Nate McMillan, you got us here. We got to bring somebody else in who can get us to the next level. Again, Malcolm Brogdon played well. Again, Indiana has to build their roster because, right now, they're down 3-0. And I guess credit goes out to Coach Spoelstra and the Miami Heat. I remember this. There's a lot of cold freezing takes on Twitter, as you can see, is that when the Big Three broke up, everybody kept saying, oh, Spoelstra's days was numbered because he didn't have that type of talent on the roster anymore. And all they did was build this roster. They've gone in the draft and gotten guys like Duncan Robinson. Were able to pick up Goran Dragic. Tyler Hero played well. Andre Iguodala is a guy that, again, you need that veteran in your locker room. I think the Miami Heat are playing well. They probably are playing some solid basketball. And it is not to disrespect the Heat, and I don't think the Heat will be in the Eastern Conference Finals, but the Heat could play potential spoilers to, Milwaukee, Boston, or Toronto. They could play spoilers. I think Miami is probably a year away. I think they're, maybe next free agency or whatever it is. I think they have a shot of improving the roster as well and getting further. I'm not going to knock them out this year, though. I think they could play spoilers somewhere. Maybe in round 2, they play spoiler. They're definitely going to need to play from Jimmy Butler. They're going to continue to need to play from Duncan Robinson. Something about Duncan Robinson is that I feel like every time he shoots, it just goes in. It's like, where'd this guy come from out the blue? So I guess that's my credit to Heat fans today. I know the Miami Heat fans are very excited. I get on them a lot, but they definitely have this roster has definitely earned the respect from me and my peers, and I know we definitely appreciate that. So we got the NBA draft lottery coming. We have the NBA draft coming up, and the Minnesota Timberwolves have the first pick in the 2020 NBA draft. Well, Timberwolves fans, if you want to clap your hands, you can clap your hands, but let me break your heart tonight. Let me break your heart whenever you're listening to this podcast. Okay? In 2008, you drafted O.J. Mayo. The very next pick was Russell Westbrook. In 2009, you drafted Johnny Flynn. The very next pick, Steph Curry. In 2010, you drafted Wesley Johnson. The very next pick, DeMarcus Cousins. In 2013, and this one's going to kill you guys even more, you drafted Shabazz Muhammad. The very next pick was Giannis Antetokounmpo. Wow. In 2014, you drafted Glenn Robinson III. The very next pick was Nikola Jokic. So, while D'Angelo Russell and the Minnesota Timberwolves were very, very happy, I don't see you guys being happy because you guys always make a mistake with the pick. So, yeah, this is my thing to make Timberwolves fans upset if they're listening to the podcast is that you guys do a horrible job at drafting. Maybe it changes because it has to change because all those names I just named, you have perennial all-stars that were drafted right after your guy, the guy that you drafted. And looking at these names, none of these guys panned out to be anything. Johnny Flynn. Like, does anybody remember Johnny Flynn? 2009? I have no clue. How many career games did Johnny Flynn play? He didn't play many, I can tell you that. So, yeah. Golden State has the number 2 pick, which to everybody, this is completely unfair that the Golden State Warriors, they were literally 1 pick away from the number 1 pick in the draft. Think about this. Hey, returning Steph Curry, please cut those braids as well, Steph. Those braids are horrible. Those braids are a bad idea. I don't know who signed off on that. If Aisha signed off on that, Houston, we have a problem because those braids are atrocious. But with the return of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green is getting healthy, they're number 2 in the draft. My thing is, could they entice a team that really wants to get younger? And I would throw a team out there because it's always there. Let's say if the Wizards say, hey, man, let's try to get younger. Let's try to move Bradley Beal. Does it make sense to move Bradley Beal? 0 sense. What are the Wizards known for doing? Making the dumbest trades ever. And they could possibly do it. Man, God, Golden State's number 2. They had the number 2 pick in the draft. Unreal. Look at the other couples, 3, 4, and 5. Charlotte, Chicago, and Cleveland. You got to feel bad for 7 and 8. 7 and 8 are the worst picks. Like, the teams are just like, look, blah. The Knicks and the Pistons. The Knicks can't catch a break. But guess what, though? Every top pick or every top 3 picks don't work out well. You remember the Jason Tatum draft? Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, Jason Tatum. Sometimes they don't work out well. One out of the top 3 worked out perfectly. The other 2, Markelle Fultz is not a bum, but he hasn't worked out well. And Lonzo Ball is now turning into a reserve. Not a number 2 pick ever again. Never. From the gift that keeps on giving is the Boston Celtics, who are at number 14, which they find a way. They just find a way to end up in the draft. I think that's another team that could possibly package that number 14 spot because teams will start calling and being like, okay, I think our guy is there. And Boston could repackage a deal. Danny Ainge has to be one of the smartest GMs ever. Unfortunately for me, I have not watched, not even watched a ton of college. There's a lot of overseas guys that are like listed as prospects for this. And I'm like, who are these people? But the problem is everybody's seeing Luka, right? And everybody wants a Luka now. That's just what everybody wants. Everybody wants a Luka. I got to get a Luka. So I feel like now college basketball is going to be competing somewhat with overseas basketball. And I don't know if you take an overseas guy again. I think the Mavericks landed Luka. I mean, that just fell out the sky to them. I don't know. I don't think LaMelo Ball, to me, I don't think LaMelo Ball is a top 5 pick. Okay? I've watched him a little bit. I think his last name has propelled him into that top 5. But then there are so many people overseas, like, and I think, and shout out to my man Daniel Artest, Daniel Artest Podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Daniel Artest Pod. That's a cheap plug as always. Some guy overseas named Denny. Never heard of these guys before. Never heard of these guys a day in my life. So the draft would be something interesting. I think a lot of teams are going to make package deals to acquire a vet. I can't be mad about that because it's all about sometimes having veterans on your team versus younger talent, especially if your teams like Golden State, your teams like Boston, who are have early picks in the first round, and you just want to probably get an established veteran that can help your team either get over the hump or get to the NBA Finals. So definitely looking forward to the draft. Again, I'm not going to talk about Brooklyn and Toronto. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to waste my time. That's just a waste of time here. Again, everybody, always listen to the Unscripted Podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Brian Ain't Lying. Definitely, I appreciate, as always, everybody tuning in. Congrats to Nick Nurse being named the 2019-2020 Coach of the Year. I still gave that title to Billy Donovan. I think Billy took lesser talent further. But, Nick Nurse losing Kawhi Leonard and having Toronto in the top 3 in the Eastern Conference is definitely a big achievement as well. All right, with that being said, I appreciate everybody listening to the podcast. Whatever platform that you're listening to, truly appreciate it. If you're listening on iTunes, please rate, review, and subscribe. It's the Unscripted Podcast, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Unscripted Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time.